Welcome back. So in this video, we'll be taking a look at how to do some basic cleaning of the data we just scraped in the last video, right? So we have our data loaded into the data frame, and we want to be sure that the columns are in the right format so that they can be loaded into the database, right? But we have 6 columns here in total, and 4 of them are already string columns, basically. So we have country, university, type, and link, right? So for enrollment and founded, for those 2 columns, they appear to be numerical columns just from what we have displayed in the screen currently, right? So we want to make sure that all the rows for the founded column are numerical, or are values that we can convert into numerical values. And we also want to make sure that all the rows for the enrollment column are numerical, right? So basically, those are the 2 checks we need to do, and also we can check for any missing values in the data frame, right? So basically, those are the 3 checks we'll do on the data. So I'm going to create a new file here. I'll just call that cleaning.ipynb, then enter. Right, so I have to select a kernel. I'll select the virtual environment as the kernel, like we did in the last video. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do is to import Pandas as PD, then run that cell. So I'll just create a new cell. And okay, so we're able to run that cell successfully. So I'll create a df variable, then read the CSV file into that variable as a data frame. So that's going to be universities.csv. There seems to be an issue. Okay, so there's an issue with the encoding, right? And the error says UTF-8 codec can't decode these bytes, right? So what I'm going to do is use another encoding, a commonly used encoding, right? Which is called Latin 1, like so. So I run that cell again, and you can see that was successful. So let's just type df.add. Okay, and we can see everything appears to be okay at the moment. But for instance, if I grab, so let's grab the founded column, right? And let's just look at the value counts. Okay, that appears to be okay as well. But since we don't have too much data, I can just check the values. And right here, we can see that this value is quite different from all the other values, right? So this is basically a string column. If I create a new cell here and just type df.info, right, we can see all the columns have objects data type, which basically represents string, right? And we can see these are all strings here. So our goal when loading into the database is to create the founded column as an integer column, right? So we can load this column as an integer, basically, right? But there's going to be an issue with this cell, or with this value. So we just need to make sure that we extract only what we need from this value here, and that's just the 1833 year, right, or value. So in order to do that, what we need to do is type df, right? So so first thing, I would grab founded, then convert that to a string, right? Then use the extract method, right? So what that means is that all the values for that particular column will be converted into a string, right? So this extract method as well will be applied across all the values for that particular column. So what I'd like to extract is just put a regex pattern, right? Regex stands for regular expression. So basically, it allows us to do some really advanced string manipulation and all that, right? But I just want to extract the first 4 values, right? The first 4 characters here. So I'm going to indicate that using the regex expression So using the regex expression, I'm going to specify \d, which represents a digit when using regular expression, right? And I need a digit of 4 characters, right? So that's what I'm indicating for here. So \d means to match a digit. And here I'm just including the digit I need needs to have 4 characters. So I'll run that. All right, so I can just wrap everything in a bracket, right, to capture that as a group, then run it. And now we can see that we don't have any error, basically. So if I type those values here, right, okay, so let's look for a suitable way to view that. So I'm just going to reassign the founded column by copying that portion, then pasting. Right, so that means df founded, which is the founded column, will be replaced by this value. So I run that. Then let's just copy this df founded and see what we have, right? All right, so we can see now we have just 1833. So the value we need has been extracted from the old string we have here, right? So what that means is that I can now convert the founded column to be of a string type, right? So in order to do that, let's just do df founded again. So I'll just create a new cell for that. So df founded, that's going to be df founded dot as type, then I put integer, right? So I run that, and we see we don't have any error, right? So if I had tried to run this, when df founded was an array containing this value, then we would have gotten an error, right? So now if I type df.info, and we can see that the founded column is now integer data type, right? So that's for founded. Now we can do the same for, so now we can do the same for the enrollments column, right? So let's just check, right? And something we can actually do is, before we do for enrollments, let's just examine. Okay, and there's actually an observation we can draw from this df.info, right? So if we check the link column, there appears to be 74 non-null values, right? And the other columns have 75 non-null values. So what that means is that there's a value under the link column that is of null type, right? So let's just check that out, right? So I'll just start this again, right? So I'll type in df. So I'm trying to filter now, right? I want to filter out a row that has the link column as null. So that's going to be df, then specify the link column, then type is null. Okay. So now, and there seems to be a mix-up actually. So from what we have here, the value that is supposed to be for link has been assigned to the enrollment column, and the link column itself is now not a number, right? So this is an error from the data extraction phase. So let's go back to the extract.ipynb, and let's just scroll up to the parts where we extracted the data. So, right, so this is the function extracting the data from each TR tag or each table row tag, right? So what I'm going to do right here is, here we are getting the list of, we are getting a particular row as a list, right? So what I'll do is get the length of that row. So normally we're supposed to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, So we're supposed to have 6 values for a particular row. So my guess is, by looking at this part, so my guess is that for the link to be assigned to the enrollment column, there must have been a row that wasn't up to 6 values, right? So if you look at our logic here, our logic was just to assign the link to the last value of a particular row, right? So if we have 5 rows, 5 values for a particular row, then the last value must have been assigned a link. But when we now loaded into the data frame, in order to pad the extra space that is missing for that particular row with 5 values, Pandas just added not a number, right, for that row. And that's why we have the link under enrollment, and the actual value for the link is none, right? So if you look at the original data frame, we're actually supposed to have something like this as a link, right? So that's my guess. And let's try to verify that by checking the length of the row. And that's just to see if the length of the row is less than 6, right? Because normally we're supposed to have 6 values in a row. So I'd like to print that row. Right, so let's just print that row, and I'll have another print statement here with just equals, right? So I'll just run everything above just to be sure we are pulling in the right data, and in case, okay, right. So I'm going to run this again, then run extract row. Let's just run this. So this is going to run extract row function against the full list of rows, right? So let's run that. And we can see we have a print statement here, and that actually matches the value we have in the data frame that's in the other notebook. Right, so that matches this value. And you can see that it has just 5 items in that list, right? So just 5 items. And in fact, our logic replaced this value with the link, right? Because this list didn't come with the full 6 rows, right? So usually it should have come with another item, which most likely should, which most of the time would have been empty, right? Based on what we saw for the other row, right? But for some reason, this just returned 5 items, and our logic replaced the last item with the link. And then when we loaded into Pandas, Pandas padded the last item with NEN. So what we'll do now is right here, if we detect something like that, and thankfully this is just affecting a single row, right? But we can just add something that says if we detect any row that has less than 6 items, then we can just append an empty string to that row, right? So we can append an empty string so that we now have 6 items in a row, and the last item will be empty string. So I'll run this, then run this again. Okay, so now you can see we have an empty string as last item, right? So now our logic would have now replaced this string with the link that's looking at the next line, the next few lines, right? So now I have to run all this all the way to the end of the file, right? So that I can have the new changes saved within the universities.csv and even universities.json, right? So what I'm going to do now is just run from here and all the cells below it. So click on this. It actually runs everything. Okay. So we've been able to run everything now. So let's go back to cleaning.ipynb. Then I'm going to run everything from the top. So I'll click on that. Right. So now you can see this now says 75 non-null, right? So if I run this now, I shouldn't have any row anymore. Right. So that has been fixed, right? And that's why it's important to actually do some cleaning on a given data set, right, before loading into the database. Right. So I'll create a new cell, and I'll just try to check for, take a look at the enrollment column, right? So let's check out the values, and yeah, everything seems to be okay except for this line. All right, so this line has, apart from the total number of enrollments, it also has a bunch of text which we don't really need, right? And yeah, even this has 600,000 plus, so we need just numerical values, like something like just 60,000. Then this also, well, this isn't so bad, but it doesn't follow the other values which have a comma, which have comma separators, right? So yeah, we just have to take note of this as well, right? But that seems to be everything, right? So we just need to write a regular expression again to help us extract numerical values separated by commas, right? So what I'm going to do now is create a new cell, type df enrollments. So convert that to a string. Then we're going to extract again, right? So you see we have extract and extract all, right? So extract will only extract a single match, which is the first match, while extract all will give you a list of all the matches. So I only need to do extract, right? Then supply my regular expression again. So my regular expression this time will be something like, so it's going to be a group. Then I'll specify \d, then 1,3, right? So what that means is that I want to extract a text, which is a numerical value that can start with 1 or 3 digits, right? So for instance, if I have something like 1,000, right? That's 1,000 separated by a comma. The first digit there is 1, which is just a single digit, right? Then if I have something like 500,000, right? That actually starts with 3 digits, then separated by a comma. So now I'm going to define another group here, but this will be a non-capturing group, right? So basically what that means is that it won't be treated as a group on its own, right? So regex can be something quite complicated, right? So most of the time, you'd just want to check for a particular pattern that can help you extract what you need from a particular body of text, right? So if I go to the browser and so I'll open this, then search for regex, right? So there's a website where you can actually learn and practice your regex skills, right? And that's regexr.com. I think there are other ones. Regex 101, I think is also a very good website to practice your regex, right? So you can enter your regular expression here, and it helps you, of course, enter a string here as well, and it gives you the match information basically, right? So I'll go back here and complete the non-capturing group, right? So I want the non-capturing group to basically match something that starts with a comma, right? So we already have something that matches the first digits, first 2 digits or the first 3 digits for a particular numerical text, right, with comma separator, right? So I include a comma separator here, and I'm going to type another \d, which can be between 1 to 3 characters as well, right? So in the numerical value, each separator, each comma separator is always after the first 3 values, starting from the right, right? So if it starts counting or starts moving a point from the last value, the rightmost value to the left, then after the first 3, you have a comma separator. Then only after you are able to move back 3 characters before you can add, more comma separators, right? So this is everything regarding that pattern that captures comma separators, right? And I can have multiple of that. So I'm going to include a star here, right? Which means we can have multiple of that subgroup, right? So imagine we have 1 million, right? Then that's going to be 3 subgroups of that particular pattern that should have comma, basically. So so that's it. I'm going to run this now and see if we have any error. Okay. So there seems to be no error, right? Which is good. So what I'll do is copy this. So I'll reassign the enrollment column. right? Now let's just print this again. All right, so now we can see everything looks okay. So for the value with a very long text, let's say we have 1,045,665. So that should be okay. So we have that right here, right? 1,045,665. Right, so that's good. So there's one more case we haven't taken care of, and that's actually, so we should have considered that before taking this other step, right? So you see, here we have 18 separated by a space on 991, but now we have just 18, right? So that's because we're only looking at values with comma separators, right? So what the code did was just to take the first two values before the space separator, since there wasn't a comma, or since there isn't a comma rather, between 18 and 991. So what we need to do in order to take care of that is to first replace everywhere we have a single space with a comma, right? So once we do that, then we can now run this code, right? So what I'll do is just above here, I'll take df enrollment, then reassign that as df enrollment dot string dot replace, right? I'm going to be replacing a single space with empty string, right? So here we can see there's no space, or rather I should replace it with a comma, right? Since I want it to match the rest of the values here. So you should have a comma, and that's exactly what I have done right here. Right, so what I can do now is we'll just print this again to see what we have. Then we'll now run this, right? So I'm going to start running all this from the beginning of the file, right? So I'll run, I will execute above cells up until this point. So I'll run that. Okay, so now we've been able to run it up to this point. And you can see we have 18 space 911 and this long text right here. Then, so I'm going to run this. Okay, no error. Then let's see the values again. And now you can see 18 space 911 is now 18, 911, right? And in fact, we have, so for this text, where we had spaces before, we now have commas there, right? So looking at this portion, for example, we now have a comma here, right? And every other place where we had space, right? But that's okay. This pattern will still work because it's only try to match numerical values separated by commas, right? So if there's a comma followed by a non-numerical value, then that will not be extracted, right? And in fact, since we need the first occurrence, it's just extract this, only this, for example, then leave the rest of the numbers, right? Because this pattern will actually extract other numbers. So it extracts 22, 2024, then 311,000 and so on. But since we are using extracts, it will only return the first results from the extraction. And that's sufficient for what we need to do. Right, so I'm going to run this now. No error. Then I'll run this. And now we can see that we actually have just numerical values with no alphabetical characters, basically. Right, so now we can continue. I think the next thing we just need to do is to convert the enrollment column to an integer, but actually we need to now remove all the commas, right? So since we are sure that everything here represents numerical values, I'm just going to now type df enrollment equal to df enrollment dot string dot replace. So now I'm going to be replacing comma with empty string, right? So I'll run that. And let's just try to see what our data frame looks like now. So you can see here, we just have numerical values with no commas, right? So we can actually convert this column into an integer column. And so I'll just type .head here. So now I'll type df enrollment equal to df enrollment dot as type integer. Run that and there's no error. Right, so if I type df.info, you see that enrollment is now of integer data type, together with the founded column, right? So looking at this now, everything is in the format we need in order to load into the database, right? So we could check the country. Let's just see what we have for the country. And you can see France has the highest number of rows with 7 rows. And everything seems to be okay. So let's just check values. And we have quite a number of countries, right? But there's no missing value basically. So that's okay. Right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to save this data frame as a CSV file. So I'll just name it universities -clean, just to differentiate it from the original universities.csv file. So I'll specify index as false, then run the cell. Right, so in the next video, where we'll try to load this data into my SQL database, all we need to do is just load the clean data into a Pandas data, then do everything we need to do to load it into MySQL. Right, so that's going to be it for this video. See you in the next video where we'll load the data into MySQL.